Hi everyone, Quiveen here from the comfort of my kitchen. In today's video, we are looking far ahead to the end of the month yet again. We are going to be looking at various objects with various tools from the city and from the countryside. So in particular, if you are looking to acquire a telescope or a binoculars, especially if you're looking to get it for someone else, it's a good idea to figure out what kind of objects the person wants to look at or what kind of objects you want to look at, as well as the kind of conditions you're going to be observing under, and then base your decisions based on that. So just to start with binoculars, even quite a small binoculars is great for looking at something like the Pleiades or the Seven Sisters. So taking a look here with a reasonably small binoculars, we can still see a little bit of the fuzzy nebulosity even from the city. We can certainly see the dense cluster of stars that the Seven Sisters are. This, I'll try to get a telescope that's or a binoculars that's good without being too good. Not something that would be way out of price. So 750, that's not a crazy big binoculars. We'll go with that for now. That kind of binoculars is great for taking a look at something like the Pleiades or the Seven Sisters. If we take a look at planets, we'll start with Venus because of course Venus is nice and close. You know, it's just very bright. We're not quite going to see the phases of Venus. If we take a look at Saturn, we're not quite going to see the rings, and yeah, it looks like Titan isn't visible no matter what we do with Saturn either. I'm sure it will be the same with Jupiter, no moons visible. There we go. So a binoculars isn't really suitable for looking at planets, but for looking at larger things in the sky, that's where binoculars can be really good because they usually have a reasonably big field of view. So from the city, I don't have much confidence that any binoculars will give a good view of the Andromeda galaxy, but oh, shooting star, it's always nice to see. Or a meteor, to give them the technical name. Yeah, there's the Andromeda galaxy. It doesn't look like I've selected it, but there we go. Okay, so not too bad. It is very, very faint, so that's going to make it difficult to make out. But simply because the Andromeda galaxy is so large, not just that it's, you know, a giant galaxy, which it is, but because it takes up so much room in the night sky, you know, it is quite a wide object. Even from here on Earth, you can see it really has a spread to it. So using something like a binocular, something that has a big field of view, makes observing those kinds of big objects a little bit easier, even if they are quite far away, as long as they're still large, as long as they take up a big portion of the sky. It can still, binoculars can still be useful. If we take a look at the Sword of Orion down here, it's going to be a similar thing. There we go. Nebulae like this, they often, you know, span several stars. They're quite large objects, even from here on Earth. They still take up a reasonable portion of the sky, and they're the kind of objects that binoculars are great for. So even in the city, binoculars can be useful for looking at those kinds of larger objects. If we want to, well, if we want to look at a galaxy that's a little bit further away, the Whirlpool galaxy is often my go-to for this, simply because it is quite distant and it looks quite nice. Because it's so much further away from us than the Andromeda galaxy, it doesn't take up as much room in the sky. I can select the star that's next to it, that's not too bad, and I think, yeah, that's showing me nothing, which is exactly what I expected from a binoculars, looking at a galaxy that's so far away. Telescopes don't have to be incredibly big to be way, way better than a binoculars. We'll come back to sunset. The phases of Venus are a lovely thing to catch if you have a significantly, if you have a large enough telescope. Oh, still selected that star there. So let's take a look at Venus here and let's go to a telescope. Now, I don't want the ocular to provide too much help. You need an eyepiece. Telescopes occasionally come with their eyepieces built in, but almost always with most more serious telescopes, you'll be able to swap in and out the eyepieces, whether they're a refractor or a reflector. This is a pretty small telescope. You can see here 60 by 700. We'll go up to something a little bit larger and the phases of Venus should become apparent. Although it may be too bright for the phases of Venus to be clear. No, it's certainly dark there and they're still not showing up. Maybe adding a couple of Barlow lenses. There we go. A couple of Barlow lenses would help. So Barlow lenses are extra lenses usually that you insert between the eyepiece and the body of the telescope. This is a reducer. So this, steps down the amount of light you're seeing. That can be very useful for looking at the moon, which is, of course, very bright, especially when it's full, if you're observing it through a telescope. But here we go. There are the phases of Venus in a 16-inch telescope. That's pretty big. Even going down to something 12 inches across, we're not seeing them. So you do need a bigger telescope to see the phases of Venus. Venus is close to us, but it's not particularly big. We're back down to an 8-inch here. So for looking at planets like Saturn and Jupiter, some of the most visually impressive, there we go. We're seeing moons, and you might be able to see a little bit of the rings shape there, or they may be moons. Yeah, I think they're moons just next to Saturn. Saturn's ring is almost edge on to the Earth at the moment, so it is a little bit harder to see than normal. But here we are with an 8-inch aperture telescope. You can absolutely see the moons moving around Saturn and going up a little bit more, up to about a 16-inch again. Yeah, with the 16-inch, we're definitely starting to see rings there. If we move the moons around, you can see that the rings aren't moving. But it does, at the moment, it almost looks like Saturn is skewered on something, almost like an olive on a skewer, because the ring looks so thin. That is just because of the tilt that Saturn has at the moment. So at other times of the year, we don't have many other times of the year left this year. But in other years in the future, as Saturn, as its tilt with respect to the Earth continues to change, that's going to change as well, and we will start to see things a little bit differently. So Jupiter, of course, a lot closer to us than Saturn. Again, we're here with an 8-inch telescope, and not only are we seeing Jupiter's moons very clearly, we're seeing the stripes on Jupiter. We're not quite seeing the Great Red Spot, so we'll move up to a larger telescope. We'll get back up to 16 inches. And I'll get rid of the names because they might be getting in the way. Of course, you won't have them to help in the real sky either. And I don't, maybe, almost seeing the Great Red Spot. I don't know if I have much more to go up to. No, these are all telephoto lenses. So these are the kinds of things that a photographic camera would use. So telephoto lens is just very similar to a telescope, a bunch of lenses that go in front of a telescope or in front of a camera that allow you to magnify your views. You can take photos of things that are very far away and make it look like you're closer to them. Telephoto lenses normally get used for terrestrial photography rather than for astrophotography. If you're doing astrophotography, it's generally easier to attach your camera to a telescope rather than using a telephoto lens. But if you have a telephoto lens anyway, they can be used for astronomy. Now, here we are looking at Mars even with a 16-inch aperture telescope, and we're not really seeing much detail. We can see Mars's moons, but they are tiny. They are very difficult to spot in reality, going down to an 8-inch aperture telescope. And maybe you might just about be able to see the moons there at the edge of Mars, but again, they are very small, comparable in size to asteroids or meteors. So, well, more comparable to asteroids than meteors. If one of Mars's moons crash into the Earth, that would be pretty bad. So we're going to go out to the countryside, because if you are looking for fainter galaxies, more distant objects like the Whirlpool Galaxy, unless you have an incredibly big telescope, stargazing from the city isn't really an option. For fainter objects like this, it is much better to get out to the countryside, whether you're using a telescope or a binoculars, and whether you're using it for photography or not. So we can see here, even with an 8-inch aperture telescope, something that struggles to see the phases of Venus. We're clearly seeing the Whirlpool Galaxy. We're not looking at the center of it. There we go, it's centered, and we can see the whole thing. If we go up to a larger telescope, you can see that we're getting a better view of the center, but the edges are getting cut off. So this can be a little bit of a counterintuitive thing, but especially for photography, if you want to get a picture of the whole galaxy, lower magnifications with a wider field of view are good because you get to see the whole thing. Even if you're maybe losing some detail in the center, if you were using a much larger telescope, you'd have to take several images and knit them together, which is a bit of a painstaking process. You usually need software to do that kind of thing. We will take a look at the Andromeda Galaxy and at the Pleiades with a big telescope as well, just to help show, yeah, how inappropriate they are. This barely looks like the Pleiades. It just looks like a star surrounded by nebulosity. Even if we get rid of the Barlow lenses, I don't think, yeah, our field of view doesn't really increase enough to see it properly. Going down to a smaller telescope, and there we've got something that looks more recognizably like the Pleiades. If we go down to something like a C5 or even less, yeah, then we're getting to see the whole cluster. We'll pop back out and take a look at Andromeda. I am after going down to a slightly smaller telescope now, so it won't be as egregious, but I will go back to using a larger telescope in a moment. There we go. So, small telescope. This is just fine. This is, well, it's better than just fine. This is quite good. This lets us see the whole galaxy, but it's right on the edge. Once we start going bigger than that, this is a fantastic view of the center of the Andromeda Galaxy, but we're cutting off loads of the edges because we're using a telescope that's too big. And it might seem strange that a telescope can be too big, but I hope that this is demonstrating, yeah, with a 16-inch telescope, you can get amazing detail of those fuzzy rings in the center of the galaxy, but we're losing so much of what we would otherwise see with the arms. And, this, if we were to add Barlow lenses, we're cutting off those edges again. So I hope you enjoyed this quick look through telescopes and binoculars and the kind of objects that they are appropriate for at different sizes and the reasons why. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to like it. And if you would like to see more of my videos, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. You can also read some of this information on my website, queeveenscontent.ie. Thank you, and hopefully I'll see you back here next time.